We'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which this podcast was recorded, the Gadigal People of the Eora Nation. We pay our respects to elders past and present. This episode contains discussion of suicide. If this raises any issues for you, support is available through the links and phone numbers in the show notes.
It's 2014, and for the past 8 years, it's been Jack Beaumont's job to pretend to be someone else. At any one time, he'll have at least 5 false identities on the go. Going to great lengths to make them convincing, his LinkedIn needs to look realistic. His neighbours need to know him. The guy at the coffee shop needs to remember him. He's not just trying to convince you or me, he's building a cover that even an intelligence agency can't blow. It may sound like something from a Hollywood movie, but for Beaumont, it becomes more and more real by the day. With those 5 IDs, he could be working up to 15 different missions at any one time. But balancing his career in the French Secret Service, the darkness of the clandestine foreign operations with his life as a loving husband and father is becoming too much. He resigns, but for years after, he wanders around his house at 2 a.m. with a knife in his hand, just waiting for someone to come. If he did it to them, why wouldn't they do it to him? I'm Ant Middleton, and this is Headgame. Today, the mindset of a spy and what happens when you try to leave that life behind. Jack, welcome to Headgame. Your jobs are fascinating. A fighter pilot. Take me back to the beginning, Jack.
So I grew up in a very old traditional French family. My mum was English, actually.
Okay.
A very conventional dad, pretty wild mum, was pretty violent at home. On the external aspect, it was like a nice little family, but internally it was not exactly the same. Mm-hmm. So basically I registered myself in a boarding school when I was 15. Without telling my parents. And then I joined the Air Force at 18, doing the fighter pilot selection. And I was selected, and I joined.
Any trouble with that? Was it
No.
Physically hard, psychologically draining, emotionally hard? What was the hardest side of it for you?
It's just that it was maybe not for me, actually, the hardest part. The hardest part was to see others, good men, highly motivated, not succeed.
Mm-hmm. Fail.
Mm-hmm. And you feel very privileged that actually you succeed, you know. But when you see others, you develop a friendship with them or mateship with them. And then those guys are physically well, intellectually well, everything's fine. But on the day they're going to have the flight test, it's a shitty day, it's raining, storm, wind. The instructor they have is in a bad mood, he's divorcing with his wife, blah, 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 blah. And you are doing the same test 2 days after, sunny, no wind, nice instructor, he's in a good mood, you know, and you pass. And so you see some guys, you know, really, I mean, their dream is wrecked.
Yeah, torn apart.
Yeah, and you see them, you know, just totally collapsing and crying and everything. And you can't save them. Mm-hmm. You can't do anything for them.
I had that experience on selection, on Special Forces selection. We got all the way to the end. Yeah. And there was, I think, 9 of us left at the end after 6 months. This is, you know, after being in the military for 7-8 years, you know, at the top of your game in the Marines or the Paras. And then on Special Forces selection, 9 of us got to the end. And it was the day before we were going to get badged, you know, where we shape our berets, and we were shaping our berets for the next day and giving them back to the instructors. And then one of the guys, he was an officer, he got pulled out, and he just came in and he was crying. And I was there shaping my beret, and I was like, what's happened? What's wrong? He said, they failed me right on the last day of selection. Yeah. And I know what you're talking about, because I was shaping my beret, and I sort of discreetly took my beret off and thought, you know, and I shed a tear for him, because I thought, wow, you know, because you live and breathe for these moments. You know,
Yeah.
you can't get any higher than the special forces in the military. You know, done multiple tours, spent years of sacrifice, years of this dream, and all of a sudden it's shattered, and it does hit you right in the heart, doesn't it? So I know where you're coming from there, because it's not a nice thing to do. And did it put a tint or tarnished our badging day? Yeah, it did, because you're now standing around with 8 of you. There's like 202 that started. Standing around, there's 8 of you, but there should be 9 of you.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and obviously you see people drop. They get, you know, a week towards the end, but you know, they might have failed something. But to get to the end, and like you said, probably because the instructor was like, he's pissed me off or he's upset me. Guess what? You're gone, and that's. Almost...
I mean, luck is
Yeah, luck plays. Do you think luck plays a big role in it?
Yeah. You need. I mean, So I joined through the what we call the small door. So it's really direct selections.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
So we were like 3,600 candidates, and 3 years after we were three fighter pilots, I mean, you need luck for sure. You need luck.
Of course you do.
Of course.
A 3-year process.
Yeah, of course you know. So every flight, you can get kicked out.
Yeah,
basically. Every flight is a selection during the whole process, and that's where we've lost the first friend of the graduation during training, the fighter pilot school.
Mm-hmm.
Very silly. He was his name was Greg Jaillet, and he was 19. He was a great man. He was lonely son, the only son of the family.
Yeah. Mm.
And he was a party machine. He was a handsome guy. He was funny. He was everything.
Typical Top Gun.
Yeah, he was top. Oh yeah, he was really Top Gun. And he when we're flying, to avoid some communication jamming on the radio, we communicate by signs. Mm-hmm. So what you do with the plane means something. So basically, if you are in let's say 150 meter formation distance, if the leader moves his wings, he's calling you in close formation.
Got you.
Okay, and you're not allowed to dive into the clouds, losing visual on your leader. So you have to be in close formation. And so they were on the top of the clouds, and the leader was, to avoid calling him actually, was looking for a blue hole in between the clouds, and doing so he moved the plane, doing some movements on the left and on the right. And so my mate understood that he was calling him in close formation. So he came in really close formation, and when he just arrived in close formation, the leader saw a blue hole on the right, on the side of my mate, and brake, thinking that he was far away, and then impacted the plane. So the leader was killed instantly, and my mate had the whole plane twisted, and one wing, a part of the wing, was taken out, and he couldn't bail out because the plane was twisted. And so he had basically 40 seconds to understand he was going to die. So, and we were all flying at the same time on the same radio frequency, and we were hearing him, listening to him yelling and calling for his mum, basically.
Wow.
On the radio.
On the radio, so you're in the air.
Yeah, on the helmet. Yeah,
and
could hear
that's
him
coming through your headset.
Yeah. Hearing him calling, Mom,
basically saying his last prayers.
Yeah, and then it stopped, and then we heard, all the planes return to base immediately. And that day, actually, a lot of guys, of course, decided to resign. And there was not so much left from him, so we had to do funerals with nothing in the coffin.
And knowing that as well.
Yeah, and lying to the parents, telling them that there was something, because otherwise they couldn't grieve.
Wow. And this was during the selection process, was it?
That was during the training process.
Yeah. And how did that affect you psychologically to complete it? How did you move forward psychologically to complete that? That must have been hard. Like you said, a lot of people left. How did you sort of engage your mindset?
I don't know. Maybe that's something, because of what I've been going through as a kid, a teenager. I've got this very, let's say, special relationship. I'm sure you have the same special relationship with death.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely understand that.
Yeah. So yeah, okay, he's dead. No, that's it. Might be me tomorrow, might not. I'm not fearing it.
To put it to one side and
that's it.
do what you need to do. The discipline kicks in, training kicks in.
Yeah.
And I always had that in the back of my mind. Anytime I went on operations or part of a task force, I knew that I potentially might not come back. I knew that we wouldn't come. The whole team, the whole unit wouldn't come back as a whole. And I knew that, And when people did pass or when people got killed, it was a case of I almost acknowledged it straight away, almost in the back of my mind it was there. I wasn't naive enough to think that we were all going to come home and tea and medals. So that's the way that I dealt with it. So when it did happen, it wasn't so much of a shock, and it was right, we need to make sure that we give this guy a good funeral, we talk to their family, we make sure they're at ease, and then we continue with the mission for them. We continue to push on because that's what they would want, that's what we would want if it happened to us. And I believe that helped me a lot.
It's also how you perceive death, I guess. I personally think that death is just the death of the body, and that you just basically hang the skin back,
the avatar, give it back.
And also what you were saying is very important to always, when you go on a mission, I personally was always preparing for the worst. So it can only be good news after that.
Of course, absolutely. Can only be a bonus, right?
Yeah, can only be a bonus.
So at 27, Jack, at 27, your career ends as a fighter pilot. Why did that happen?
So I joined very early. Then I was sent to. I flew single seaters for dogfight. So you pull a lot of Gs, and it's 9 Gs each time you turn and stuff. So I was doing air-to-air combat, not bombing. I had a few times to do some ground-to-air support, opening fire with the cannons. So we have 2 cannons of 30 millimeter with 2,300 bullets per minute per cannon. So make some holes.
Good deterrent as well. When the enemy know you've got that, it's a good show of force.
Yeah,
right?
but first you do a show of force, high speed, low altitude, and then you.
I've called in many shows of forces.
So it was good fun. There again, I've lost a few friends, mainly in training. Accidents are always stupid, but some are more stupid than others.
But when you're training at that elite level, it's the same with the special forces. The selection process, even when we train, we're climbing onto ships, climbing onto boats, accidents happen. And when accidents happen at that level, there's one result really. If you come out and you're still breathing, then you're lucky. Yeah. And it's needed though, when you train at that level, that's what you sign up for. You sort of know you're going to get into that. And it's, once you acknowledge that even through training, we lose so many people in the special forces just through training because you get it wrong, you're dragged under the boats, you fall out of the sky. It's something that, you're going to die from. It's not nice to know, but you have to train at that level to be at that standard, right?
Yeah, exactly. You don't really have the choice.
No, you don't have the choice.
But it's a commitment. You have to know from the very beginning that that's what you're going to do.
Yeah. Don't be naive enough to think that, this won't happen to me, because I'm sure you've had a few close shaves as well yourself where you're just like...
Yeah. Very, very
that could have been my time.
A few times.
And is that why you left?
No. So I had a flying accident. I crashed with the jet. I was doing this training over France, air-to-air combat training, and I pulled, long story short, I pulled too many Gs in a bad position in the plane. So I was totally twisted in my seat because I was looking behind on the other guy coming on me. Mm-hmm. And when I saw him, I was totally twisted in my seat. And when I saw him, I had to counter and reduce his turning room. So that he overshoots and I can reverse and kill him behind. Right. And I took 11.3 Gs, but twisted in the seat. So my spine was compressed and twisted in the same time, but it's putting basically 650 kilos on the lower back, but twisted. So you had the expulsion of 3 discs on the lower back, on the lombine spine. So the disc popped out on the left side.
As you're manoeuvring, as you're pulling, as you're doing that maneuver to counter back to counter, get the fighter pilot.
Yeah.
You do that during it pops, boom.
Yeah, the 3 disc popped out because my spine was compressed and twisted in the same time.
Wow.
So it has been pushing out the 3 disc on the lower back.
11 Gs.
11.3. Yeah.
Listen, 9. People talk about getting to 10 Gs is like impossible to survive.
Yeah, it's pretty violent.
God.
And so all the nerves of the left leg were pinched.
Yeah.
So I was paralyzed of the left leg in the plane. The pain was very intense. So just before fainting, I had the time to put pure oxygen over pressure in my in my oxygen mask, not to faint.
Right.
So basically, the oxygen is pure oxygen instead of air.
This is a sort of protocol that you do if you're in the ship, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And then it forces itself to your lungs, it just goes in.
It's like just pushes it into your lungs.
Yeah.
And that kept you awake.
Yeah, kept me awake, but the pain was massive. And the problem is when you land, you control the front wheel of the plane with your legs, and you brake on the top of the feet. And my left leg was not working anymore. So the flight director on the radio said, okay, you go to the ejection zone area and you bail out. And I said, no way, because ejection seats, you don't do it for fun. It's 25 instant Gs.
That compresses the spine in itself, doesn't it? You're already fucked.
Exactly.
You're already in a bad way. You're paralysed on one side of the body. That could potentially kill you.
Yeah, well, you have 2 tons of pressure per square centimeter under the seat. So basically, from the moment you pull the handle, 1.3 seconds after you're under the chute. So it's really violent. And as I already had a problem in the spine, I would have been best dead, and worse, I would have been in a chair for the rest of my life, and not the other way around.
Yeah.
And so I decided to try to land the plane, and I had a brilliant idea on the paper. It was just on the paper. I thought that if I leave my right leg smooth, then I could press with my hands on my knees to try to control the front wheel, because the left leg was not working. And so I thought, if I leave the right one smooth, I will manage to control the front wheel. But of course, it didn't work.
That wasn't the case.
So only the right leg had been braking. And so I went out the runway on the right side, hitting the grass, landing gear went in. So I just had the time to push down the crash barrette, so cutting all the hydraulic, electric, fuel, etc. And then I went on a fireball, basically on the right side of the runway. So I broke all the left side of the body. So I woke up at the hospital after the surgery with 2 big tubes in the
So
in the
you
back.
hit. What's the last memory that you have when you hit?
When the plane went out the runway on the right side. So we land in this kind of emergency, we land at 180 knots. So it's 340 km per hour. So it's a good accident. So I
very good accident,
decent one.
Yeah.
So I woke up at the hospital after the surgery. So I was strapped on the bed because everything was broken. I couldn't move, blah blah blah. And so the surgeon came and I said, when will I be able to fly again? And I said, I think, my young friend, you don't well understand the situation. Your pilot career ends here. And I said, I don't think so.
X-ray.
Yeah. And I said, I don't think so. So I was back in a jet 3 months after.
Oh, you got back in?
Yeah.
So you just
but
ignored
the thing is,
medical advice and just done your own thing?
Yeah, so to fly you have to have the medical
of course.
a green light.
Yeah.
But of course it's very expensive to train a fighter pilot. And I was
millions.
at the highest qualification as a fighter pilot. So basically you end up with a military doctor saying, look, from our point of view, if you eject, you're dead or in a chair. You can't fly. You can't hope that you would eject with nothing. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's your call. We wouldn't recommend you to do it. But if you want to do it, you have to sign the waiver.
Just sign here, yeah.
and if something happens, it's not our fault.
Because they've invested millions into you, right?
Yeah.
Training, everything, multi-millions, you're an asset to them. And all of a sudden, you're no longer, they've put all this training, all this time, all this money into you. They want
return on investment.
they want their return in investment. So I understand the waivers. Just sign here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I signed it, of course. I was young and clever, and so I signed it. And went back flying on jets. And then very, very quickly after that, painkillers in the morning, painkillers before the flight, painkillers after the flight, painkillers at night to sleep. I was becoming a zombie. I was scared to take 9Gs. And so...
it had a psychological impact on you.
Not the crash itself, just the pain.
But the pain after.
Pain all the time. Just
where you push it, and you just hold it back.
I couldn't cope with the 9Gs anymore.
Yeah.
And when you do dogfight, the one who can't take 9Gs is dead.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So I had a chat with my CEO, and he said, "Look, I think you're gonna kill yourself, or worse, you're gonna kill someone else. So you have to put your hand up and stop." And I said, "Okay, I agree. I have to stop, but I want to be retrained as something else, and I want something sexy and rock and roll."
So basically, what they've said to you, and with your with your training, knowing that you've pushed it to the limits, you're going to either kill yourself or kill someone. It's basically just retraining yourself, but staying in the military, but just branching off to another unit, to another another splinter cell, shall we say?
Yeah.
So you had all this training as a fighter pilot. That stops. What do you train yourself as, and what direction do you go in thereafter?
So they came back to me a few weeks after. So they got it, and they came back to me a few weeks after saying, "Look, we need a pilot for special forces for very specific missions, short takeoff, short landing, no fly plan, illegal landing, landing by night vision goggles, all the lights off, flying lower than the trees."
You get me excited, Jack. You're taking me back.
So I was like, yeah, it looks fun, looks interesting. So I said yes. So I was retrained. As you know, the strength of a chain is the strength of the weakest part of the chain.
Yep.
And you mustn't be the weakest part of that chain. So even if you're flying for special forces, you have to have all the training as special forces, because if you crash the plane or whatever and you're on the ground, you mustn't be that weakest part of the chain. So I had all those, because my back was fine except pulling G's.
Yep.
My back was fine. So I could still jump, I could all this kind of stuff. I thought it was fine. So and so I was retrained on various kind of planes, short takeoff, short landing. So I was basically detached from the Air Force to Special Forces Command, and I was flying for various kind of special forces.
So you must have been flying intelligence.
So it was at the beginning was
special
only
forces.
Special Forces.
Okay.
And then after a certain amount of time, I saw some guys coming in the plane in jeans, sneakers, stuff, and I was like, okay, maybe they're not special
What
forces.
am I flying?
Yeah.
Do I really know what I'm flying?
Yeah.
No, listen, you just do the short takeoffs, the short landings,
exactly.
get us onto target.
Yeah. And when you take off, you stay very, very, very low.
That's it.
Why that? Because they have some RPGs.
That's right.
And so you have to. Okay. Yeah. So it was good fun, and then so I did a lot of the hunt of the Serbian war criminals in the Balkans.
Yep.
So hunting Mladic, Milosevic, and all those guys was very interesting. And sometimes I was flying special forces, and sometimes I was flying intelligence. And then I had survival training in the Alps, high altitude mountain, because I was meant to go and do the same in Afghanistan for bin Laden. So you know the game, huh? Because I'm sure you've been doing it. Basically, we're dropped in the middle of nowhere.
Interrogation phase, resistance.
And then we have first the 5 days. 5 days where we had to survive by ourselves, and the rest of the team hunting us with the dogs and commandos and everything. So of course I was very well hidden. I was in the middle of nowhere. I was digging my igloo, and you know how snow is actually very heavy on spade. and I did this stupid movement, twisting like this with my spade.
And you say it's stupid movements, isn't it? And you're just like, why the fuck did I do that?
Yeah, why?
Yeah.
Why? Anyway, one disc popped out again, but I was in the middle of nowhere.
I know it well,
yeah.
Jack.
And of course, nighttime. Otherwise, it's not funny. And so I had to walk down the whole mountain by myself with the massive pain because the disc was out again, until I could see torches and hear the sounds, and then I've been, throwing the flare.
Yeah.
So they took me hospital again, second surgery in the back, and then the military doctors said, "Look, 2 surgery, that's the law. 2 surgery in the back, you can't fly in the military anymore. You're done. So you still have your civilian medical ability to fly, commercial pilot, because I still have my professional commercial pilot license. You can fly in the commercial, but general aviation, but military, you can't fly anymore." And I was like, wow, I've been flying fighter jets, single-seaters, dogfight. I've been flying special forces, and I don't want to drive a bus. No offense to commercial pilots, but yeah, I don't want to drive a bus. So I was really lost at that time. And then I had a lunch in Paris with a mate who was actually DGSE, so French External Secret Service, so French MI6.
Yep.
He was one of the one I used to carry at the back.
I was going to say, these were probably the guys that you probably cast your memory back to, like, who are these guys?
Yeah, but that's how we met.
Oh, we're in jeans and they've got a different top on, why are they in civilians? And so that probably sparked your memory from, right, I've been flying these guys.
Yeah, but that's where I've this one in particular, that's where I've met him when he was sitting at the back. And we kept in touch. And so I said, why don't you try to join us? And I said, well, yeah, that looks funny. That looks sexy and rock and roll. So the test to join is 1 year.
Yep.
So not to lose this 1 year, not knowing if I was going to join or not, I went back to some studies and did an MBA in business intelligence and doing my test in the same time. Then I was selected. And when you are selected like this, you join as an officer.
Yeah.
You are going to a directorate, which is called the Intelligence Directorate, where you start as an analyst. And after a few years as an analyst on a very specific topic, then you can move on to handling sources, human sources, on the same topic. And then you can move on to being sent abroad in an embassy with a diplomatic passport, blah, 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 for a few years. That's the intelligence division. The operational division, the cowboys, bad boys, it's very hard to join, and you don't ask for it. Yeah. They come and pick you. Yeah. So I succeeded. I passed the first test to join the DGSE. When I heard I was selected, I was doing my. I was with my wife in IKEA, and I haven't told her that I did those tests. So I was doing the shopping in IKEA, and I received a phone call from my boss at that time, General, and he said, "You're gonna receive a call in the next minute, unknown caller. You should take it. It's related to what you applied for." I said, okay. So I was still at the top of the ladder trying to pull the IKEA bed out of the whatever, and my wife was like, "What's happening?" I said, "No, nothing." Phone call, and they said, you are a candidate for this and that. I said, yeah. Well, we expect. So
you've been moved now into that corridor, right?
Yeah.
It's and what went through your head when you got that call? Because that's a different ball game, like you said.
I think you
get maneuvered into it.
I didn't realize that, because it's like, as you said, it's fighter pilots. It's everyone's like, yeah, Top Gun, and actually, when you are a fighter pilot, it's very, very far from Top Gun.
From the glitz and glam.
From Top Gun. It was the same for a spy. I didn't really know what it was, the meaning of it. I just was attracted to it, and I knew that that's something I wanted to live and go through, and I wanted to have this experience.
To do something like that, it's definitely, it has to come naturally, it can't be forced, it can't be, it's such a unique job. We have it in the Special Forces. Once you've done a few years, it's sort of like a secret within the unit anyway. Once you pass selection, you've done a few years, there's a different branch. People, your mates are going away for 18 months to 2 years. I was nearly pushed down that avenue, but I'm too hyperactive. I'm too, I can't sit still for 5 minutes. So when it sort of came up, I was like, no. And you sort of saw certain people push down that avenue, like, because you have to ultimately disappear, don't you? You have to disappear. How hard was the training going through that? And did you realise it would be as psychologically demanding and emotionally demanding? Because when you're there and, you're going through the airports and they're like, and you're just, standing there as if to say, and you're a completely different person. How did you detach yourself from who you are as the person that grew up?
It's going through the airports, etc. is not so hard. The worst is when you end up sometimes being really like interrogated. That's a different story.
When you're pulled aside? Yeah.
In some countries, they have a suspicion or something, But when you join like this, the operational division is doing some cherry picking, basically on the recruits joining the other division, and then they ask you if you want to join, do the test. You have to do some test again, not telling your hierarchy of the other intelligence division. And then you join I joined the operational division, and then I did 7-8 years of clandestine operations under false identity. What does that mean? It means that you have different subdivision in this directorate, let's say, of the operational division. Some of the guys are spending long time per year under one false identity, which is very heavy.
Yeah,
a bit like what you see in the TV show The Bureau.
Yeah.
So one false ID, very heavy, and they live their real false life.
That's right.
With the other job, etc., and they are not doing any normally offensive stuff. They are detecting some personal interest.
They are more surveillance, isn't it?
Surveillance, the country,
Intel.
the geopolitical status of the country, or potentially try to identify some potential human sources which have to be recruited, but they are not the one recruiting them. Then you have another one which is very much pure action.
And that's the 5 identities, right? 5 to 10 identities where you're... Yeah,
so one which is pure action. Sometimes they're going to do some bodyguarding, for example, if someone of the intelligence division has to handle a source in the middle of Baghdad. He's not trained, so he needs some protection. He needs some backup. He needs this kind of stuff. So, and then you have the pure operational thing for illegal, illicit operation. So
illegal, illicit. No, I don't need to translate that.
So all the that's where you have the 5 different IDs all the time, but one ID is associated to one mission. When you finish your mission, you usually destroy the ID and recreate a 5th one for another mission.
So you're always becoming someone else, right? When you're like that, because once that mission's done, you have to then, everything that you've learned about that individual, that you've put yourself in their headspace. You've created a different individual, basically. That then gets scrubbed, boom, and then you're on to the next one in 24 hours, and then you're on to the next being, the next person, the next career, and again, you're literally taking on different skins, shall we say, different headspaces. How hard is it to jump into that? I know we're trained and people say, I'll go back to your training, but it's not as easy as that, because you have to be emotionally connected and you have to be psychologically, like you said, this is just an avatar, we can bring this around anywhere. When you're jumping in and out like that, how hard is it?
Well, at the beginning, it's kind of fun.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you do it, the hardest it becomes.
Mm-hmm.
That's why, actually, when we are recruited, they are looking for the mental stability and the mental honesty.
Integrity, right?
Integrity.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, the marriage actually is a good sign of that. So if you're happily married, shows some mental stability and mental honesty, etc. But the thing is, from the moment you're going to join, what they're going to ask you, in the yin and yang, they're going to ask you to develop the dark side as much as you can, because you need to fight the bad guys the same way they're fighting. So you need to become very, very, very dark as them, even darker than them.
Go into the deepest, darkest corners as well.
And so usually it will impact the marriage. And so the rule is usually divorce. That's the part of the administration, the French administration or armed forces, where you have the highest rate of suicide. And so it's quite amazing, because they are recruiting you for your thanks to this marriage, which is basically an anchor, which is supposed to ground you and makes you think, okay, that's not my real ID. I need to come back home, But in the same time, what you have to do is so dark that you end up, after a certain amount of time, depending on who you are and depending on the people, do you
lose who you are? Sorry, Jack, jumping in. Do you lose who you are? Does that darkness take over? Do you find yourself, being someone that you're not?
Yeah.
And
yeah, well, actually, that's what is very interesting on the psychological aspect, is that are you really becoming someone that you're not, or are you becoming actually your real yourself?
And you can't differentiate between the two. Yeah. So is it hard to separate?
And you think,
wow,
actually,
that's fascinating.
And you think, actually, maybe when I was the good husband and the good father, maybe it was not me.
So you're starting to question yourself.
Yeah, maybe the who I am really is this guy holding a gun and doing what he has to do, And maybe that's why I'm therefore on the planet, in that life. Maybe so. You have all those different ideas, and then you end up coming back home. And actually, your real yourself just becomes a sixth ID, another ID, and you play the game. You play the game of the husband. You play the game of the dad.
Does it feel like you're playing a game when when you're that husband and it feels real? Then all of a sudden you're taking on these different identities, these different personas, these different characters. Do you feel like when you're going back that you're just jumping into
another character?
And you just let's just play this game. Yeah. Right, I'm being the husband, blah blah blah. But do you feel it? Or do you just go along with it?
So that's the thing. If you're lucky enough, you're gonna realize it. You're gonna detect it, and that's the good moment to say, I need to stop. If you don't detect it, and if you don't realize it, and you go further than that, you lost.
Did that happen to you?
I've been reaching that point really at the limit, where I looked at myself in the mirror and I thought I'm a monster.
When was that moment you looked in the mirror and you thought, I'm a monster?
Because I had some real hard thing to do. Usually when we enter someone's life, basically, to recruit this person, to grab the intelligence. You have different kind of intelligence. Mm-hmm. Let's say you have 90% of the intelligence is white. I guess you know that. It doesn't mean that it's easy to find. It means that it's open sources, some specialized blogs, or, for example, if you intercept some phone communication falling into your plate, it's white. You haven't stolen it.
Yeah, exactly.
Anything. Then you have 9% of the intelligence, which is gray, which is basically in someone's mind, but this person is not trained to protect it. And then you have 1% of the intelligence, which is black, which is in an encrypted hard drive in someone's mind, but this person is meant to protect it and trained to protect it, this kind of stuff. And what I was doing is basically only on the 1% of black, of grabbing this intelligence. A bit of gray, of course, but mainly black. So when we want the information in someone's mind or or in an encrypted hard drive or in a safe or whatever. And we're going to play on human, usually the people we approach. And when we enter someone's life, the rule is it will never, except in a few occasions, but usually never end up well for this person. Because from the moment we have this intelligence, we don't want anyone else to have the same intelligence. We don't want anyone else to know that we have this intelligence. We don't want anyone else to know what we've been asking and who we are. So basically this person has to disappear. Okay? So that's the rule. When you enter someone's life, you know that this person is not going to have a great end. Okay? Mm-hmm. So sometimes they are good people and sometimes they are bad people. When they are bad people, terrorists or whatever, but you don't give a shit.
No.
Yeah. When they are nice people, but they have this intelligence in their mind and they are at the wrong place, wrong time, let's say, and you really try the best you can to find some other ways to grab this intelligence so that you can save this person in a way.
Yeah.
But sometimes you don't have the choice.
Yeah.
You have to go to this person.
You have to go to the source.
You have to go to the source.
Yep.
And so basically you smash this person's life. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying it happens every day, but it happens several times
it happens.
week and stuff. So when you do this all the time, you this someone else, and you smash this person's life, and you smash this person's life, and you smash this person's life. It's now you end up coming back home, and you have your wife, your kids, and you realize how fragile all this is, and how basically it's all a game. So you really feel like being in the Matrix,
mm-hmm.
you know. And then you look at yourself. You look at your own eyes, and you can see your soul through your eyes, and you can see that your soul evolved, and you don't. The appearance and the body doesn't mean anything anymore. You just look at yourself and you think, I'm very, very, very dark. And then your wife says, I don't recognize you. I can't recognize who you are. You're not the man I'm married. And then you know it's the good time to.
And that's what happened with you.
To stop, yeah.
She looked at you, she said, I don't recognise you anymore.
Yeah.
Did you not recognise yourself as well? Was it a moment that you looked at you took a step back and you looked in the mirror and you thought, I'm on this line. I can either just get swallowed up and do this for the rest of my life and have no life.
Yeah.
Or
end up with
psychologically
with a 9mm eye.
Yeah, exactly.
Through the head. I mean, when you end up at 2 a.m. Checking the whole house in the dark, naked, not putting any lights on, with a knife in your hand, every door, every window, everything, sitting on the couch, waiting for someone to come in for 2 hours.
That's what it got to.
Yeah, because you're used to do this to others.
Yeah.
That's the main difference with special forces. When the mission is over, when you're taken back from Afghanistan, you arrive home, you have a time to decompress, but then no one's going to hunt you.
You're out of it.
No one's going to hunt you over the weekend. Intelligence, it just never stops.
And the bad guys know.
The bad guys you've been fighting last week, they can come on the weekends, on holidays, on whatever. So there is no safe place. There is no break. There is no weekends.
There's no escape.
So there is no escape. So I did this for 7-8 years. It's 7-8 years of war non-stop. It's 7-8 years of war mission non-stop. Yeah. That's the psychological impact I'm talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
And of course, I mean, at some point you have to stop. Yeah.
You have to, but you have to, and I realised that as well when I decided to leave. You know, I'd done 3 kinetic tours of Afghanistan. I was combat fatigued. I loved my job, but I was psychologically drained. I was mentally drained. I was emotionally drained from what I'd seen and what I'd done. And you almost think to yourself, do you know what? My headspace was so in it for 10 to 12 years. I gave everything. Now it's time to pass on the baton because I know that there's going to be a younger version of myself coming in that lives and breathes it, that is obsessed with it, that puts it before, which I'm not shy to say. I put everything before my family.
Yeah.
I had children, but my job came first. My mind's, and the moment that started to flicker, and I started to go, I like this job 98%, and you're not 100 because you have to be 100% committed, focused, obsessed with the job. Then I knew that was my time to put put my weapon down and go, right, listen, I'm going to leave. And you found yourself walking around every night.
Yeah, Oregon.
Fucking hell. Yeah. And after that you thought, I'm done.
Yeah.
So when did the moment come? Talk me back to the moment when you were like, was it a breath of fresh air? Was it relief? Was it, because I know how hard it is to go, I'm done. But when did that moment come?
Well, it came when I looked at myself in the mirror and thought I was a monster, and that the
dark side had taken hold.
Yeah, and the light in the yin and yang, the light and the white side was only a very small sparkle. And I thought, if I'm not living now, the only thing which will remain is the dark, and I will lose my wife, my kids, and everything. And that's where
yourself
and myself, of course. But that's where you realize how much you love, your kids, your wife, and actually how much it's important. And it's very, very hard to come back from that. It's very, very hard to regrow this light and this, and push away the darknesses. Even now, I mean, sometimes I'm.
Yeah. I mean, that cloud comes over sometimes. Yeah.
And also because you've seen the worst of the human nature.
Worst of humanity.
The worst of humanity for those 7-8 years. And when I say the worst of humanity, I'm not only talking of the others. I'm talking about myself as well. When you've seen the worst of humanity like this, and you've been really in the darknesses of yourself and of the others, you lose faith in humanity, and it's very hard. Now each time I go to a dinner or whatever, some places, I mean, when I meet someone, if he's not from the tribe, I can't, I always I always imagine what's under, and the worst of the human nature.
Have you lost faith in humanity?
Yeah.
You have?
Yeah.
Even to this day?
Yeah. Except for my kids. But I think writing the book, that's how it started. A mate here. So my wife's Australian. I'm Australian myself now. And one day I was having beers here in Sydney with a really good friend of mine, and he said to me, "You should write a book. It would help you." And so that's how I started to write it.
Did it help you?
Yeah, a lot. Yeah. So thinking it was not going to be published, it was a very cathartic, personal process.
Got you. More of a memoir for you, just to. Yeah. Because it is, when I write my books, it helps you psychologically, because you're almost talking to yourself, but revisiting and, accepting or realising what you used to do, and just going, it is sort of like a therapeutic process for me to write books. Did you find that with yourself?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. But the thing is, of course, with my former employer, I couldn't write my memoirs. So
Same.
So I made it a novel.
Yeah, of course.
I made it a novel, and
from non-fiction to fiction.
Exactly. I mean, it's really the psychological aspect of the book. Of course, you have the spy plot and everything, but there is a massive psychological aspect in that book. So,
do you think it saved your life? Did you ever contemplate taking your life at certain stages when it got really, really dark?
Yeah,
you did. You thought, I'm just going to end it.
Yeah.
Wow. And you've written a second book.
Yeah, second book, which is called Dark Arena. And same, it's and it's based on true missions and etc. But of course, romance, fiction. But the feeling and the base of the plot is real.
Yeah.
And basically, it leads back to the actual situation in Russia, between Russia and Ukraine. So basically, showing what happened behind the curtain. Basically.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So it's all about energy and gas and on the Med Sea and
Well, Jack, it's been fascinating to talk to you. The Frenchman, your first book, Dark Arena, your second book coming out beginning of next year, which is great. I definitely need a copy for that. And hopefully you'll find or re-establish your faith in humanity along the way.
Yeah, I hope so.
Writing these books. I know it's hard to trust. I know it's hard to really have that faith, especially with what you've seen. And I understand that. And I've been outside of my job now for coming up to 12 years. And I'd say over the last couple of years, I've started to re-find or re-establish my faith in humanity, and I'm sure and I hope that you do too. But listen, enjoy your clan.
Thanks.
Enjoy your moment, and I'm glad that you've come out in one piece. Jack Beaumont's book is called The Frenchman. Check it out via the link in the show notes. Thanks so much for joining me on Headgame. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any of our incredible stories. And leave me a review wherever you're listening. I'm Matt Middleton. Catch you again next time.